In the Torah, we learn that a parent's word is like a seed. Plant it wrong, and it chokes the whole tree before it even blooms. My name is Rabbi Eli Cohen, and I'm 78 years old now, sitting here in my little study in Brooklyn, where the candles flicker just like they did when I was a boy. I was born in Haifa, Israel, back in 1947, right after the war, when the world was still picking up its broken pieces. But my parents brought me to America as a child, to this bustling corner of New York, where Russian Jewish immigrants like them scratched out a life from nothing. My father was a tailor. My mother kept the Shabbat table warm with stories of survival. Tales from the old country, whispered over challah and wine, about how the Nazis couldn't take their spirit, but loss could carve a hole in your soul that never fills. They raised me on those lessons, not with lectures, but with quiet warnings around the family table, where every bite carried the weight of what we'd escaped. I became a rabbi because of them, a listener to souls, a witness to the hidden pains people carry like stones in their hearts. But let me tell you, nothing prepared me for the regret that hit me like a storm when I looked at my own son. I gave him what I thought was everything: freedom, support, a path without thorns, believing it was love. Instead, it drove a wedge between us, left him wandering in a world that chews up the unprepared. That pain, it's a constant ache, like the echo of a prayer unanswered. I've seen it in so many families since, this quiet unraveling, and it breaks me every time because I know now what we parents do wrong without even realizing. What I discovered about raising children isn't the feel-good advice you find in books or hear at synagogue gatherings. No, it's a harsh truth, one that shook me to my core and changed everything I believed about family and legacy. It's not about giving more to your kids, it's about holding back certain things that seem like gifts but turn into chains later on. This truth came to me through a woman named Miriam, a devoted mother from a tight-knit Jewish family right here in New York. She was like so many of us, raised on the values of hard work and kindness, the kind my parents instilled during those long Shabbat evenings. Miriam poured her heart into her only son, David, giving him the world on a silver platter. No rules too strict, money whenever he asked, praise that painted him perfect. It seemed like the ideal life, the kind every parent dreams of providing. But beneath that ordinary surface, there was a riddle, a mystery that unraveled everything. David's success looked real from the outside. Good school, a job waiting, but inside, something festered. One day, he just vanished, leaving behind a note that cut like a knife. "Mom, you gave me everything, but I have nothing." That was the start of it for Miriam and for me when she came to me for counsel. What she learned and what I'm sharing with you is that some gifts we hand our children aren't blessings. They're curses in disguise, and by the time you see the damage, it's often too late to take them back. Have you ever stopped to wonder why some of the best parents end up with kids who seem lost, even when they've given them the stars? Why does kindness sometimes backfire, turning into a weight that crushes instead of lifts? Or why that child you raised with open arms drifts away, chasing shadows you never taught them to face? If you felt that tug in your own heart, that quiet doubt about the choices you made around your dinner table, then this story is for you. It's a mirror to those moments we all question in the still of the night. Let me take you back to my own childhood in Brooklyn when I was just 8, begging my father for a shiny new bicycle like the other boys had. He looked at me with those tired eyes, the ones that had seen too much in Europe, and said no. "Eli," he told me, shaking his head over his sewing machine, "a candle's light dims if you try to hoard the flame for yourself. True strength comes from wanting, not just having." I sulked then, but years later I saw the wisdom in it. That simple denial built something in me, a resilience that carried me through life's storms. It's the same paradox Miriam faced. She thought giving freely would root her son strong, but it left him adrift. And here's the first shock that hit her. the fact that stopped me cold when she shared it. David wasn't failing because of what she withheld. He was crumbling under the weight of what she gave without limits. Her everything had become his emptiness, a void that pulled him into the city's underbelly, far from the warmth of their family minyan. Think about that. Your love, poured out like wine at Passover, turning bitter if not measured right. It makes you pause, doesn't it? Stick with me, because this is just the beginning of the truths that will turn your understanding upside down. Now, let's walk through this riddle together, step by step, like we used to debate the Talmud in yeshiva, questioning every layer until the light breaks through. I'll share the truths I've gathered from years of listening to families like Miriam's, truths that start simple but twist into something deeper, something that might make you see your own choices in a new light. The first key, the one everyone nods to at first, is about freedom. We all know the saying, give your children room to grow. Let them spread their wings like birds leaving the nest. It's the foundation of a strong life, right? Hold them too tight and they wither. Let them breathe and they flourish. I saw this play out beautifully with my cousin Aaron, who lives back in Israel now, near Jerusalem. Aaron raised 3 boys in a modest home. No iron rules, no curfews that clipped their spirits. He'd say, over Friday night dinner, a child is like the light of the menorah. Dim it with too many hands, and it flickers out. So he gave them freedom, wander the hills, make mistakes, come home to stories around the table. And look what happened. Those boys grew into men who honor their father, one a doctor healing the sick, another a teacher passing on the Torah's words, the third building homes that shelter families. They thrived because Aaron trusted the soil of their Jewish roots to guide them without smothering the growth. It's a truth that feels solid, like the stones of the Western Wall. Freedom builds character, turns kids into pillars of their own lives. Miriam thought she was doing the same for David, opening the doors wide, letting him explore New York streets on his own from a young age. She beamed with pride, saying it was her way of giving him the childhood she never had, shadowed by her parents' fears from the old wars. But here's where the first twist comes in, the doubt that creeps like a shadow at dusk, making you question if that solid truth holds water. What if freedom without any boundaries isn't a gift at all? It's the first thing you should never hand your child, because it leaves them adrift in a sea with no anchor. Aaron's story worked because his freedom had invisible lines, drawn from love and tradition, like the laws of kashrut that guide without chains. Miriam's didn't. She let David roam too far, too soon. No talks about dangers, no pulling him back when the city lights started pulling him wrong. I remember her telling me, her voice cracking, how he'd stay out nights, chasing friends who led him to empty promises. I thought I was setting him free, she said, but I was just letting the wind take him. And in the Talmud, we read about the dangers of unchecked paths, how even the righteous can stray without a map. That freedom turned into a void for David, one that echoed back as trouble. Skipped school, bad crowds, a life unraveling while she watched from afar, helpless. It shook me when she shared the details, because I'd seen it before, parents thinking openness equals love, only to find their child lost in the wilderness. Believe my experience here. The line between freedom and abandonment is thinner than you think, and crossing it plants seeds of regret that grow wild. That brings us to the next layer, where things get a bit more tangled, like threads on my father's old sewing machine. Freedom alone isn't enough. It needs purpose woven in, a direction to point the way, much like the Shabbat rest that isn't just idleness, but a recharge for the soul. You can't just open the gate. You have to teach them why the path matters, show them how to value the steps. Think of my old neighbor Isaac, a quiet man from the Russian old country who settled in Brooklyn after the war. Isaac believed in building security first, so he hoarded every penny, denying his 2 daughters the little joys. No new dresses for holidays, no trips beyond the block. Save for tomorrow, he'd grunt over his coffee, echoing the wisdom of our Ancestors who stored grain against famine. And in a way, it worked at first. Those girls grew frugal, smart with money. One even started a small business selling baked goods that tasted like home. But purpose? That was missing. They never learned the joy of giving, the spark that comes from sharing a slice of challah with a friend. As they got older, resentment built like a storm. Why sacrifice for a father who saw life as a ledger, not a celebration? One daughter left home bitter, cutting ties. The other stayed but hollow, her days filled with counting coins instead of counting blessings. Isaac came to me one evening after lighting the candles, confessing how his gifts of caution had starved their spirits. It's a paradox, isn't it? Withholding the material to teach value can build walls instead of bridges if you forget the heart behind it. And tying this back to Miriam's story, the second twist hits hard, a fact that made her eyes widen when we pieced it together. She hadn't just given David freedom. She'd layered it with money, endless allowances for every whim, thinking it would fuel his dreams without the struggles she knew. No lessons on earning, no talks about the sweat that makes wealth meaningful, like the labor that bakes the matzah just right. David confessed in that note before he left. The cash bought him things, sure, a fancy phone, nights out. But it also bought silence from her, a way to avoid the real talks. "You paid for my quiet," he wrote, "but I needed your words." That unchecked wealth became the second thing never to give without purpose. It turns kids into wanderers who chase shiny distractions, mistaking them for fulfillment. Miriam's family had come from nothing, her grandparents fleeing pogroms with empty pockets, yet she repeated the cycle in reverse, flooding David with what she wished she'd had. But as the sages say, a word is a bird. Once you let it fly without wings of wisdom, it can't return. I urged her to see it. Her gifts weren't building him up. They were burying the chance for him to find his own ground. Now we dig deeper still, into the motives behind what we give, because that's where the real shadows hide. It's not just the act, giving praise, freedom, or means. It's why you do it that matters. If it comes from guilt or fear, like a stone weighing down your heart, it poisons the well. Praise from a place of making up for your own lacks? That's not light. It's a dim bulb flickering in the dark. Let me tell you about my friend Sarah, a widow I knew from the synagogue in Manhattan. Sarah had lost her husband young in a car accident that left her with one daughter, Leah. To fill the void, she showered Leah with words of perfection. "You're my angel, flawless, the best." Every day, every report card, even when Leah stumbled. It was Sarah's way of healing her own pain, whispering those affirmations like a private prayer. Modeh each morning for the child she almost lost too. At first, it seemed to work. Leah bloomed confident, top of her class, the girl everyone envied at family gatherings. But underneath, those words built a fragile shell. When Leah faced real failure, a breakup, a job loss, she shattered, because no one had taught her flaws are part of the human weave, like the threads in a tallit that hold the prayers together. Sarah came to me in tears one Rosh Hashanah, admitting her praise was laced with her unspoken grief, turning Leah's strength into arrogance that cracked under pressure. The Talmud warns of this. Intentions unchecked lead to unintended paths. Motives matter. They're the root that feeds the tree or chokes it. The third twist in Miriam's tale reveals just that, a detail from her past that she finally shared with me after hours of quiet talk, her hands trembling like leaves in the wind. Digging into why she gave so freely, we uncovered the silence she carried, the family pain she never spoke of, the echoes of her mother's stories from the Holocaust, the losses buried deep to protect David from unnecessary hurt. She thought hiding it was kindness, the fourth thing in disguise, but it left a void, an unspoken burden that David sensed and filled with his own rebellions. "I wanted him to have joy without my shadows," she whispered, but those shadows crept in anyway, fueling his escape. He wasn't running from her love, He was fleeing the unspoken weight, the family ghosts she passed on, without a word. It was a shock to her, and to me, how that silence became his heaviest load, turning their bond into a riddle wrapped in regret. I tell you this not to judge, but to illuminate. What we withhold out of fear often hurts more than what we share. As we reach the heart of this story, the shadows grow deeper and the bonds more tangled, like the threads of an intricate tallit prayer shawl stitched with years of tradition and silent struggle. Now we come to a hidden law that many parents never see until it's too late, a paradox that breaks the surface calm and reveals the rugged truth beneath. The fourth key, a truth as ancient as our people's history, is this: sometimes, to truly gain something precious, you must first lose everything. It's a lesson I learned from an old patient of mine named David, no relation to Miriam's son, who came to me after losing his family business in a fire. David was a tailor from a small town in Russia whose hands once crafted suits for the community's weddings and bar mitzvahs under the glow of a single lamp. When the flames took everything, he was crushed, felt like his whole world was swallowed by darkness. But in those ashes, David found a strange clarity. With nothing left, he returned to the synagogue, to the books of Torah, and to long conversations with his children that had been absent before. The fire burned away his pride and resentment, leaving him open enough to rebuild not just his life, but his relationship with his family. It was the hardest loss that gave him his deepest gain. This is the first hidden law. Sometimes loss is the light that reveals what love truly means. But Miriam's story, there's more to it, much more. She thought her troubles had bottomed out when David disappeared, but as I listened deeper, I realized this was only the surface. But that was not the end, she whispered to me one evening, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I dug deeper into his past. His pain was older than I imagined. He carried shadows no mother should ever know. And that's when I understood the second hidden law, the fifth key. The greatest sin we can pass on to our children is not a mistake or a failure. It's giving them the burden of our own unfulfilled lives. Miriam, though loving, had wrapped David in her unresolved guilt, like a rope that bound him tighter with every attempt to free him. One Yom Kippur, after a long confession in the quiet of a synagogue, he revealed to her the weight he bore, echoes of secrets her family never spoke aloud, scars she tried to hide beneath smiles and silent prayers. This pain wasn't visible, but it was alive, dragging him down every day. It's a harsh truth. Our unspoken regrets become silent chains around those we love. I saw this heartbreaking cycle in Rachel, a young woman I counseled years ago. Her father, a man haunted by his failures, tried to shield Rachel from hardship by painting their life as perfect. He gave her everything except the truth, creating an illusion as delicate and dangerous as fine glass. When reality finally broke through, Rachel found herself lost with no anchor, crashing into despair. Her healing began only when she embraced the shadows her father hid. We grow stronger not by running from our darkness, but by walking through it, hand in hand. Miriam's son learned this the hard way. His journey home wasn't just a physical return, but a pilgrimage through the pain they both carried. In those moments, between sorrow and revelation, I heard her say, "Sometimes the greatest gift isn't what you give, but what you let go." It struck me as the deepest secret. Love is not possession, but release, the courage to let your children find their own light, even if it flickers away from you for a time. So, as we unravel these truths, listen closely. The first keys were about freedom's limits and wealth's meaning. The deeper ones are about the emotional legacies we pass down. Miriam's story, like so many, teaches us this final hidden rule. To raise a child whole, we must dare to face our own brokenness, to let go of the masks, and to live honestly with fear and hope intertwined, like the threads of a prayer shawl in the twilight of Shabbat. And if you think this is all there is, remember, the story is not finished. The hardest lessons often come last, and the secret to healing begins when we finally say what we've been too afraid to speak. Now, after unraveling these threads of truth and shadow, it's time to bring them together, to let the light shine on the full picture behind Miriam's story, and perhaps your own. All those keys, those lessons, that freedom must be paired with wise boundaries, that wealth without meaning is a hollow gift, the dangers of praise rooted in fear, and the silence that breeds pain. These are not separate threads. They weave into one pattern, one truth, that explains the heartbreak Miriam lived through. When you stand back and look at it whole, you see something unexpected. The problem was never really the things she gave or withheld. It was the sixth and most silent weight of all, the illusion that love means giving without limit, without any walls. That illusion, as sweet as honey on a Shabbat challah, blinded her to the truth that love, like the Sabbath itself, needs rest, balance, and sacred boundaries to flourish. It's the same truth passed down in our prayers. Too much flame without rest consumes the wick until nothing remains but smoke. I remember sitting with Miriam one cool evening, the light of the menorah casting dancing shadows on her face, and saying softly, "You thought love was endless giving, but sometimes the greatest act is knowing what to withhold." Her tears told me she saw it too, that she had to stop trying to fill the emptiness with things and start filling it with real presence, with honesty, and sometimes with tough love. And because stories are not just for telling, but for living, I want to share a simple ritual that can help you carry this heavy truth without breaking. It's a practice born from centuries of Jewish wisdom, a way to open the heart gently and connect with those you love, even when the pain is hard. Every Shabbat evening, when you gather around the table, light a candle and say the Modeh Ani, the prayer of thanks for a new beginning. Then take a moment to share with your child, or if they are grown and far away, in your heart, one shadow from your day. One thing that frightened you, or made you doubt, or just weighed on you secretly. No judgments, no fixes, just truth. This simple practice plants roots of courage and trust deep in the soul, like the Shabbat rest planting peace in the week's wounds. It teaches us that vulnerability is not weakness, but the light that breaks through the cracks of even the oldest pain. Miriam found this helped her when David returned, slowly, not with apologies, but with openness, carving a new way forward together. And I tell you, from my years of listening, nothing heals better than the courage to name your shadow beside the one you love. This lesson, the way all these pieces fit, is a powerful healing for anyone who fears the weight of the past or mistakes made in love. It reminds us that family isn't about perfect gifts or flawless lives. It's about honest hearts held together, even as they crack. And so, as you carry this story with you, may you find the courage to say what's hard, to love with boundaries, and to unwrap those gifts carefully, mindful of what they truly mean. Now, at last, we come to the deepest secret beneath it all, the ultimate truth I want to leave with you. It's not a rule or a lesson, but a law of the heart that many never understand until they have faced their own shadows. The greatest gift you can give your children is not your things, not even your time, but your authentic self, flaws, fears, and all. When you try to hide your brokenness behind perfect words or endless gifts, you create an illusion so fragile it shatters at the first sign of struggle. But when you dare to let them see your real, imperfect light, you give them permission to be human too. It's that paradox. Freedom isn't just the absence of limits, it's the courage to be vulnerable. Love isn't possession, but release. You protect a child not by sheltering them from pain, but by teaching them how to walk through it without losing their way. This is the final truth Miriam learned, and it changed everything for her and David. When he returned, it wasn't to a perfect home, but to one where brokenness was accepted and healed together. This law is echoed in our prayers and writings. A broken heart is the altar where real growth begins. It's a hard path, but the only way to true closeness. So, what does this mean for you listening now? It means hope, even if you feel lost or regretful. What do we do when faced with our own shadows? We don't run, we don't hide. We look them in the eye, like Jacob wrestling the angel, and we accept that struggle as part of the sacred journey. You can start today by opening your heart just a little more, sharing your fears, your regrets, and your love honestly with those closest to you. That is strength. That is healing. And in that space, you and your children can find peace together. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you know who might be wrestling their own shadows. Write in the comments below, which part of this story surprised or moved you the most? And don't forget to subscribe so together we can continue unraveling the deepest mysteries of the human soul, one story at a time. Before I leave you, I want to bless you. Guard your heart carefully. Remember, true wealth is the courage to be honest with yourself and your loved ones, even when that honesty stings like the first light of dawn. May your homes be filled with light, truth, and the courage to face all that comes.